If you can believe it, old Hollywood scandals were crazier than the ones we see nowadays. It's true that back then studios and men of influence had greater leeway to commit murder because of the more traditional nature of society. It wasn't just men, though. Plenty of female celebrities had their fair share of drinking and adulterous affairs, too. Between the 1920s and the 1960s, Hollywood saw its golden age. But this period wasn't always a time of success for the industry. Watch till the end of this video to learn about the top biggest scandals that Hollywood tried to hide. Fatty Arbuckle's manslaughter charge. The year 1921 may have been the beginning of Hollywood's first major scandal. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, a comedian, and Virginia Rapay, an actress who was not well known at the time, met at a party and later found themselves in the same hotel room. When the other guests heard Rapay writhing in pain, they ran into the room after hearing her screams coming from the adjacent room. A few days later, she passed away due to a ruptured bladder, and her friend accused Arbuckle of raping and accidentally killing her. The comedian was accused of manslaughter, but the charges were subsequently dropped when he was cleared in all three trials. Carol Brady's date with her son. Let's put a positive spin on things by discussing the occasion when Carol Brady dated her own son. Except that, in reality, she didn't. Florence Henderson, who portrayed Carol on the long-running TV show The Brady Bunch in the 1970s, went on a date with Barry Williams, who played her eldest son Greg on the show. Williams wrote about this in his autobiography, Growing Up Brady, I Was a Teenage Greg, which came out in 1992. They went out to dinner at a restaurant when he was 16 and she was 36. But it's important to note that the date ended with a kiss on the cheek, and Henderson then went home to her husband and 4 children. I had no idea that his intentions were to date me, Henderson said. It made for a good story, though. Joan Crawford starred in an adult film. Joan Crawford supposedly starred in a short adult movie called Velvet Lips when she was a teenager, long before she became famous. Once she was a big star and had signed with MGM Studios, they were desperate to find and destroy the movie before it could come back and hurt her career. Eddie Mannix, a notorious fixer who worked at MGM, may have collaborated with the mob to get the movie. They tracked down some extortionists who offered to hand over the movie in exchange for $100,000, which was a big sum at the time. There's a theory floating around that Mannix just gave up the cash. Another theory is that he offered the extortionists $25,000 for the film and threatened to have the mafia kill them if they didn't take the money. The film, however, was never released to the general public. The Mafia Killing. Lana Turner had a dangerous taste in men. In 1958, she was dating a known mobster named Johnny Stompanato. Unsurprisingly, the relationship was tumultuous from the start. Later, Stompanato was found stabbed to death in Turner's house, and Turner's 14-year-old daughter was arrested for the murder. Turner's daughter claimed she had defended her mother from Stompanato's assault out of self-defense. Turner herself testified in court, detailing what happened that tragic evening. The jury agreed that the defendant's actions were justified by the need for self-defense. Later, it was said that Turner had murdered her husband and framed her daughter for it. The mysterious death of Paul Byrne. Producer Paul Byrne, who was married to Jean Harlow, was thought to have killed himself in their home in 1932. The police discovered a peculiar message he had written to Harlow, in which he expressed regret for the wrong he had done to her. The last line says, "You understand that last night was only a comedy." No one could figure out what he was talking about, and Harlow flat out refused to answer any questions. Before he married Harlow, Byrne was in a serious relationship with a woman named Dorothy Millett. When she lapsed into a coma, physicians told Byrne she would never regain consciousness. It took 10 years, but by then he'd met and married Jean Harlow, and his life was transformed. After learning that Millet had awakened from her coma and wanted to see him, Byrne invited her to his home and is presumed to have forced his wife to leave for the evening, possibly through an argument. Byrne's body was discovered the next day, along with the gun and the mysterious note. And after disappearing for 9 days, Millet's body was discovered in a river. Her suicide was suspected. The whole thing is stranger than fiction itself. Judy Garland was forced to starve herself. Judy Garland was still a teenager when she signed with MGM, but she was immediately subject to intense pressure to maintain her slim appearance and had to endure grueling work. The 14-year-old endured constant verbal abuse from the set's producers and crew, who compared her to a fat little pig with pigtails and other insults. At the age of 18, she was subjected to a strict diet of coffee, cigarettes, and diet pills by MGM founder Louis B. Mayer. Garland was given pep pills to help her stay slim and alert for as long as possible. Then they'd give her a sleeping pill to help her get some rest, and then give her a pep pill to get her going again. Drugs like amphetamines and barbiturates were almost certainly administered to her, and her resulting addiction ultimately led to her death at the age of 47. Many were sad, and just a few were surprised. The diet pill culture. Judy Garland was hardly the only victim of this poisonous management. Debbie Reynolds remembers that MGM Studios saw that her health was deteriorating as a result of the excessive working hours, and as a result, the studio sent her to a doctor to receive vitamin shots. In reality, the injections included amphetamines, and their primary purpose was to help maintain a healthy weight. Luckily, she refused and saved herself from disaster. Female stars pressured into abortions. Hollywood studios pushed several of its brightest actresses, including Judy Garland, Jean Harlow, and Joan Crawford, to have abortions. Studios had so much power over the lives of their actors, we can't even imagine it. Numerous actresses and other celebrities had abortions forced upon them by their respective studios. If an actress wasn't married or was having an affair, she would be given a fake name and sent to the hospital for the procedure. Clark Gable had a secret child. When Clark Gable played the lead in The Call of the Wild with Loretta Young in 1935, he got a little more than he expected. In spite of the fact that Gable was still married to Maria Langham at the time, he and Young had an affair that resulted in the birth of their daughter, Judy. In an effort to keep the pregnancy a secret, Young left the country as soon as she started to show, gave birth in California, and then adopted the child from there. Judy, who passed away in 2011, was 31 when she finally found out the details of her origins. Gable never said in public that Judy was his daughter. John Lennon outraged religious Americans. Despite the fact that John Lennon has been linked to far larger controversies, both during and after his lifetime, the one the public seemed most worried about was his claim that the Beatles were, quote, more popular than Jesus, end quote. When it was initially published in the London Evening Standard in March 1966, it didn't raise much of a commotion. However, when it was republished in the teen magazine Datebook 4 months later, the controversy heated up. Some American radio DJs smashed Beatles records live on the air and urged listeners to send their Beatles records and paraphernalia to the station to meet the same fate. Meanwhile, his song Imagine, in which Lennon sang of a fantasy world with, quote, no religion, came close to being an instant hit and is now considered a masterpiece. Ingrid Bergman's affair. Ingrid Bergman was a happily married actress. Fans needed to believe that to stay on board. An affair between Bergman and Italian filmmaker Roberto Rossellini began during the production of Stromboli in 1949. Both were married and left their spouses for each other, mainly because Bergman became pregnant. Bergman's fame and popularity plummeted as a result of this scandal. It was the norm at the time for prominent persons to publicly condemn her actions, and so many did. Someone even called her a powerful force for evil. Bergman and Rossellini tied the knot, eventually having 2 children together. They soon divorced. She continued to have success in the film industry, and the public soon forgot about the controversy. Natalie Wood died under mysterious circumstances. By the time Natalie Wood was 25, she had 3 Oscar nominations under her belt, but she may forever be best known for drowning under mysterious circumstances. Wood, age 43, was on a boat ride with her husband, actor Robert Wagner, and her Brainstorm co-star and rumored lover, Christopher Walken. Her 1981 death was initially ruled as accidental, but after new evidence about an argument between Wood and Wagner the night she died came to light, the case was reopened. During a press conference in February 2018, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department said they were, quote, still working on the case. Jackie Coogan's parents took all his earnings. Before turning 18, Jackie Coogan had already appeared in 19 films, including The Kid with Charlie Chaplin. He made an estimated $4 million from his movies, but his parents wouldn't give him any of it. In 1938, Coogan filed a lawsuit to recover the funds. However, after paying his legal bills, he was only awarded a total of $126,000. But his lawsuit helped pave the way for the California Child Actors Bill, which shields a portion of a child actor's earnings until they reach the age of 21. Producer Thomas Ince's mysterious death. Thomas Ince, an early pioneer in the film industry, celebrated the holiday season aboard business tycoon William Randolph Hearst's yacht in November 1924. His early departure from the festivities had, on the face of it, a simple explanation: an upset stomach. Several days later, Ince passed away from what were thought to be natural causes. Yet the situation took a dark turn. The Hollywood rumor mill, however, rapidly came up with several theories, the most prominent of which was that Hearst, who wrongly believed his wife to be having an affair with Charlie Chaplin, who was also on board, shot Ince instead of Chaplin by mistake. Walt Disney's Nazi friends. Many people believe that Walt Disney had anti-Semitic sentiments. Regardless, there is little evidence to suggest otherwise, and he had no qualms about surrounding himself with blatant anti-Semites. When Nazi filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl visited Disneyland in 1938, Walt Disney graciously gave her a tour. Riefenstahl's most famous propaganda film, Triumph of the Will, 1935, was already in circulation shortly after Kristallnacht. When Riefenstahl came to Hollywood, Disney was the only studio chief to give her a warm welcome. The death of the original Superman. The first guy to play Superman was George Reeves. Officially, it was said that he committed suicide in 1959, although there were whispers of murder. The evidence gathered after his death makes it seem implausible that he took his own life. Reeves had been having an affair with the wife of Eddie Mannix, a renowned Hollywood producer, and it's been established from various sources, including the Joan Crawford tale, that Mannix was affiliated with the mob. Alfred Hitchcock harassed Tippi Hedren. Decades before #MeToo, Hollywood was a playground for men who lorded their power over vulnerable women. In 2016, actress Tippi Hedren accused director Alfred Hitchcock of harassing her while they worked together in the 1960s, claiming that he grabbed her, tried to kiss her, and had a secret door installed between his office and her dressing room. In Hedren's autobiography, Tippi, a memoir, she wrote that Hitchcock would, quote, find some way to express his obsession with me, as if I owed it to him to reciprocate somehow. Hitchcock's long-reported obsession with Hedren was the central plot of the 2012 movie, The Girl, which didn't portray the famed director in a positive light. Charlie Chaplin's teen brides. Charlie Chaplin had 4 marriages throughout his life. He was 29 when he got married for the first time and 53 when he got married for the last time. But all of his wives were pretty much the same age. His first 2 wives were both 16 years old. He wed his second wife in Mexico to sidestep California's marriage laws. Chaplin's third marriage was a step in the right way, since he was 47 years old and she was 20. But he slipped back for his fourth and final wife, who was 18 years old. Charlie Chaplin was exiled from America. Another time Charlie Chaplin made headlines for all the wrong reasons was when U.S. Attorney General James P. McGranary publicly criticized him for being anti-American. After Chaplin came to the United Kingdom to promote his final movie, Limelight, in 1952, McGranary banned him from re-entering the country. Chaplin eventually gave up his permit for re-entry, moved to Switzerland, and refused to go back to the United States until he got an honorary Academy Award in 1972. Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich were rumored to have had an affair. Despite sharing many characteristics and arriving in Hollywood from Europe at around the same time, Marlene Dietrich and Greta Garbo never showed any public admiration for one another. Anyway, there was a big fight about a lost film called Joyless Street, made in 1925. A few people said Dietrich was in the film as well, along with Garbo, but Dietrich flatly denied it. A film historian looked closely at the footage from Cervin and came to the conclusion that Dietrich did appear in the movie. She also thinks that the actress lied because she and the other woman had an intense but short-lived affair while producing the Joyless Street, which made them both hate each other for the rest of their lives. Joan Bennett's husband shot her agent. In 1933, Joan Bennett and Katharine Hepburn starred in Little Women, and Bennett went on to marry the film's producer, Walter Wanger. After Wanger overheard Bennett and her longtime agent Jennings Lang having a conversation in 1951, Bennett found herself at the heart of a controversy. Out of furious rage, Wanger allegedly began shooting at Lang's groin with a gun. Lang recovered in the hospital. Wanger served 4 months in jail, and Bennett's career took a nosedive. Peg Entwistle's tragic end. Peg Entwistle was a young British actress who moved to the U.S. to follow her dream of becoming a star. She was in a play with Humphrey Bogart and got a few small parts after that. But nothing big came after her big theater debut. When the Great Depression happened, it became more difficult to find work. She lost her contract with RKO Studios and didn't have many chances left to become famous. Entwistle left her house on September 16, 1932, and said she was going to the drugstore. Instead, she walked up to the famous Hollywood sign, climbed to the top of the H, and threw herself off. She was only 24 years old. Her death is now well known, and people call her the Hollywood Sign Girl. In the Netflix show Hollywood, a part of her story was told. 3 people died on the set of one movie. As filming of Twilight Zone, the movie, was underway in California, a tragedy occurred. Actor Vic Morrow and young actors Renee Shin Chen and Micah Din Lee were killed when a chopper crashed during the filming of a Vietnam War-era scenario. John Landis, the film's co-director, and 4 other people, including the film's special effects coordinator and helicopter pilot, were charged with involuntary manslaughter. It was the first time a film director was charged with a crime for something that happened while making a movie. The 10-month trial that took place in 1987 ended with the acquittal of all 5 accused. Ted Healy's suspicious death. Comedian, actor, and the brains behind the iconic comedy troupe The Three Stooges, Ted Healy was a mainstay in vaudeville. He was murdered in 1927 after being attacked outside the Los Angeles nightclub Trocadero. There is a tremendous deal of discrepancy in the many stories of his death, and this has led many to speculate that influential people were involved and that a cover-up was hatched. It has been suggested that future Batman producer Cubby Broccoli, actor Wallace Beery, and a New York gangster were responsible for Healy's death. Legend has it that Louis B. Mayer and Eddie Mannix, both major players in the film industry, hid the truth. The Spade Cooley murder. It's no secret that country music superstar Spade Cooley had a temper and other character problems. But as his fame grew, they became more pronounced. He became paranoid and had a tendency to squander all of his money. When he began to suspect that his second wife, Ella May, was having an affair, he went completely insane. For hours, he beat her to death in front of their daughter. He was found guilty of her murder, but was pardoned by then-Governor Ronald Reagan thanks to the efforts of his celebrity pals. He agreed for some reason. Cooley was to be pardoned, but he had a heart attack and died before that could happen. Scandals in the past are indeed crazier than today. Now it's time to hear from you. Which of these scandals surprised you? Were any of your favorite actors mentioned on this list? Let us know. Anyway, see you in the next video.